Ahoy and welcome into the regionals here on Six Rotations. We are 1 week away from Louisville. Make sure to go online, grab your tickets. You never know what you're going to grab. Last year, we got these cool bucket hats in the Final Four in Tampa. Even got mine, inscribed on the back, which is so much fun.
Wait a minute.
Mick did
How
as
about
well.
this?
How about that? He's Mick Haley, multiple time national champion. They had the Mick Haley match last weekend. We'll talk all about all of the opening weekend matches. I'm Daniel Gilman. And as always, we're brought to you by SNA Sports. Better equipment for a better game. Mick 13 14, 15, 16, some of these later seeds, they had a lot of trouble, and we're really excited to dive in. At the end of the day, 11 of the 16 move on to the regionals. We had some major upsets on Thursday to kick things off. Loyola Chicago with the big win over BYU, and then a huge finisher on Saturday night, Mick, as Missouri upset SMU. We've got a ton of volleyball to talk about. We've got a giveaway to get to in a little bit. As always, we are on patreon.com/six rotations with bonus episodes that we gave you Thursday, Friday, and throughout the weekend. We'll do it again this week. Mick, where should we start here in this awesome, awesome, jam-packed weekend?
Well, I don't know where to start. I know where we finished, but and I know where we are. So, we know the teams that are going to play this weekend. Um, you want to talk about who they beat to get there?
Yeah, let's
It's
do it. So I want to maybe try to find a semblance for us to go through this with a bit of organization. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go quadrant through quadrant. We're going to recap and preview and then move on to the next quadrant. So Mick,
great.
we start things off in probably the least stressful area of the bracket, and that is the top left, where the only bit of anxiety maybe came in that first match between UTEP and Oklahoma. Now, the Sooners put up a fight against Pitt as well, but the Panthers and Oregon are meeting up here. Where do you want to talk when it comes to that top left quadrant?
Well, I just would say this. I think Pittsburgh is going to just sail through. I just feel like the whole side of that bracket, they outscore them, they outpoint them, and they give fewer points than any of the other teams there. I don't see Pitt losing, but I see some really nice efforts by people. I thought Oklahoma had a good tournament, actually.
Yeah.
I thought Oregon lived up to their hype to get as far as Pitt, but I don't think they get by Pitt at all. I think that's probably 3-0, 3-1 Pitt for sure in that part of the quadrant. As far as the games went, I think you felt Hawaii would come out over TCU, but TCU, even though they were downtrending at the end of the year, had enough to get that first match, but then they couldn't go any farther, and Oregon pretty much took care of them easily, and so now we get Pittsburgh and Oregon in the top left part of the bracket, and it should be fun for Pitt.
Yeah, Pitt, they had that wild set against Oklahoma, and now they kick things off by kicking off our opening weekend of regionals. And so we'll talk about the schedule as well. But Mick, I, for one, am very happy to have daytime weekday volleyball back. I had some people texting me last week saying, where are the noon, where are the 1 o'clock games on Thursday and Friday? Now, of course, there's going to be a large sector of working people that don't want that. They want the night matches. I would rather have a spread out schedule where we're not trying to watch 4 or 5 big time matches at the same time like we did on Saturday night. It was so tough to keep up with. Everything was happening at once, a ton of excitement. But Pittsburgh Thursday at 1 o'clock starts things off with Missouri and Kentucky, and then it's Oregon Pitt. So those will be mid-afternoon games on Thursday. And Mick, we move over to that Kentucky, Minnesota, Missouri, SMU scramble that was going on right around the same time. Both of those matches I thought were must-watch volleyball. Despite them only going 4 sets, they were still extremely exciting. And then Iliff for Missouri was a superstar. We get to talk in this episode about some of these unknown or lesser known superstars, and Jordan Iliff lived up to the hype for Mizzou. And the SEC is reigning tall right now with their weekends with Kentucky and Missouri meeting up.
Well, we probably shouldn't have been really we shouldn't have been surprised that Missouri did well. If we looked at their numbers, Missouri is 14 and a half kills per set this year, 17, almost 18 points per set, and they're giving up 8.5 points, and that's their only negative. But when they got into that match with SMU, it just seemed like nobody was ever going to win. They just kept going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And to give Missouri credit, they had 3 or 4 times they had a chance to win the match and didn't. And then SMU had a chance to win, and I thought then they would go, couldn't do it, and Missouri came back. So it was really quite an interesting match. But I think Missouri is a challenging player to win this first round in this regional. And if you look at Kentucky's efforts, they are on the upswing. They have improved their stats from the regular season and
Really,
they've
the
improved
outcomes
their
are improving.
play. And they are giving fewer points than they gave early in the year. And that's one of the big things for Kentucky. But they still go through one player and one player alone. And so Missouri has a chance to win this, I think, in the first round.
Yeah, obviously it's going to be a matchup of Iliff and delay. For Kentucky, they were able to get some extra help against Minnesota, and it was a strong Minnesota team. Despite a blowout first set, Kentucky took it 25-11, and then Minnesota, not Missouri. Minnesota took the second set 25-23. But when Grom can get help from others, Megan Wilson had 11 kills, only 26 swings. Aaron Lamb, very similar stat line there. That's where the recipe can find its way working for Kentucky. I think that playing in Pitt is a bit of a toss-up in terms of whether there might be an advantage. Maybe the Pitt fans are rooting for Missouri over Kentucky based off of wanting the upset to happen. But, Mick, we got to do the bonus episode, so we're not going to talk too much about the first round because we were on Patreon and kind of breaking down. But what Mizzou did with Texas State was extremely impressive. You talked about it and how they were able to just cream a pretty good Texas State team, really lays well. This region in the top left feels like it's all Pitts. And that's obviously the SMU upset gives way to that. And I'm excited because I think it's good for the sport if we can get Pitt into the Final Four once again. We can show maybe a National Player of the Year coming from that team as well. And so, Mick, we move over to the bottom left. Things got a little spicy, as you might imagine, in Lawrence. And for the second straight year, Kansas cannot get it done on their home floor in 5 sets. Really, really interesting setup coming with Florida and Stanford, a matchup for the ages. And now, because of the loss that we saw, the Gators are primed in a position, I think, to maybe go on a run. I don't know what you thought from Stanford against LMU.
Well, I thought Stanford played the way Stanford plays. I do think they're playing better. They've reduced their giving of points. They've got that down to about 8, which is 2 points more than Pitt. So just keep that in mind where Pitt is playing and Creighton are both playing at that level. But Stanford looks to me like they have a good chance to win. The thing that's interesting to me is Florida did not play well all season and now seems to have raised it up a level.
Yep.
And their numbers actually are very close to Stanford. Stanford outscores them in kills, outscores them in points, but only by a small fraction. And their gives are about the same. I think this could be a very competitive match. If Florida comes in and plays over their head a bit, they have a chance to win this.
And if you can get 50 kills from the Martin duo, it's going to be a match to remember, and it's if Stanford can find a way to settle down Kennedy Martin, who is on the fast track to National Player of the Year finalist. She did post that she is not considering transferring, so she was able to quell all those rumors. Remember, the Gators have had some off the court issues in the tournament in the past, if you remember that. And so it was good for her to kind of stamp on that and silence it. Now, Stanford has not dropped a set in this tournament yet. They are working like a finely tuned machine with Rubin 15-0-26 is a terrific number in the middle. And then new names that not many fans may know about. This isn't the Stanford of old. These are some newer names with Kurt and Harvey. They each had one error in a double-digit kill effort against LMU. I just think that you play in Louisville and you give Florida an edge there in terms of travel and potentially some sort of contingent of Gator fans. And so we talk about Louisville, we carry it to Louisville, Mick. Purdue crushed Western Michigan and Loyola Chicago and thought for a good moment that we might get UNI against Purdue. It was an incredible match. Louisville persevered. Walk me through what you saw in that five-set thriller.
Well, I thought the style of play by Northern Iowa was reminiscent of years past. They did not run fast goes. They did not run really fast plays to the outside. It seemed to cause Louisville's block uh, a lot of problems. They were early. A lot of times they were catching the ball on their way down. A lot of times on their touches. Um, and it seemed like they were overplaying, and it allowed Northern Iowa to get into a rhythm, and they tooled so effectively. In fact, I think 50% of the Northern Iowa swings were not destined to go to the floor. They were all off the hands and enlarged the size of the court that Louisville had to cover. So I gave Northern Iowa a lot of credit to sticking to their system, and for better terms, the unfortunate service errors at the end, they would have come out on top of this match. I thought they had Louisville exactly where they wanted them. Louisville perseveres, and I think this is the one factor that's not a statistic for Louisville, is they compete. They continue to compete. They are the lowest ranked statistical team as far as kills, points per set, and gives of any of the top eight teams, and yet they continue to come out on top. Now let's talk about Louisville Purdue. This is Purdue's chance to get to the Final Four. Louisville has been playing down. They haven't improved during the season to the playoffs. In fact, it feels like they're just hanging on here. And that may be the pressure of hosting the Final Four also, because it seems like to you and I that might be an advantage. But to them, there's a lot of noise all around, noise about where families are going to stay, where are you going to do this, how many people are coming into town, and all of that stuff. And so they may be just hoping that they get to the Final Four. But I assume if they can beat Purdue, then they'll be playing free when they get to the Final Four. But Purdue is a great obstacle right now because Louisville's only scoring with their two left sides, and Purdue's only scoring with their two left sides, and once in a while Coven. So, it's going to be a really interesting match. I have that as my flip of the coin match, along with one other one, flip of the coin. I'll get to it in a minute, but let's just stay with this.
Yeah, that was a good tease. Now, Purdue against Louisville will be the late one. So, Florida Stanford at 7 o'clock Eastern on Thursday, and then Purdue Louisville in what should be a sellout in Louisville. And Mick, it's a rematch of the 2022 second round. Louisville swept Purdue in Louisville. So the Boilers have a ton of experience. They played they played Louisville almost every year, the years that I was working for them, 18, 19, 20. You would constantly see them playing in this one preseason tournament that had Lipscomb and Xavier as well, called the LUV Invite. So there is a lot of familiarity, not to mention the border battle. And so
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to throw in there. The border battle, people don't understand, but the Indiana Kentucky high school basketball game has always been one of the biggest events ever in Indiana for the last 100 years, and people will tell you everything. And now with volleyball becoming so popular, it's now a team from Indiana playing a team from Kentucky in the NC2As, and both states are going to be paying big attention.
not to mention, there are a ton of homegrown players on both of these teams. I am so excited for this matchup between Colvin and Chacoin and Hornung, and you go down the list of Indiana natives. Eva, obviously, Hudson from Fort Wayne, that know how big this matchup is and this hump that Dave Shondell has not gotten over. But I want to go back and relive some of these moments from the UNI Louisville fifth set because a lot of the blame is going to be put, and rightfully so, to the service errors. But when you talk to any coach, they are never going to blame service errors for a team's loss because that means they're serving aggressively. Obviously, when you serve an error at 17 all, 18 all, 19 all in the fifth set of a tournament match, it's going to be under scrutiny. But Mick, at 14-13 Northern Iowa, I thought they won the match. And then Anna DeBeer came up with a left-handed tip that won the point and kept the match and her career going. And then it's DeBeer that puts away the overpass to give a lot of credit to someone who has been completely blown apart by pundits this season. She has not been a favorite of yours this year, Mick, but Anna DeBeer, she needed to come up big at the end, 19 kills. I think it'll be her cause again that carries them, unless obviously it's her cause that ends her season against Purdue as well. It'll be the live and die by DeBeer show, and you got to give you and I a lot of credit. They thought they had it. I thought they had it as well.
Well, I think DeBeer has been good for 5 years. I just think the amount of pressure on her this season has been so great that it's been very difficult for her to be as good as she wants to be every night. And every team is going to try to shut her down. So that allows Looper to get some free swings in there and a little bit more or less pressure. DeBeer has carried it, and as you said, she hung in there and made sure that they got to the next stage of this tournament. So I think she's done everything she's supposed to do, and certainly they're very grateful to have her.
Looper with 19 kills. But Mick, what has made Louisville in the past better than the other team in December? I think it's been the middles, right? The PKs of the world that have carried the Cardinals. I'm not seeing much middle production here
Nope.
late. And that's where the X factor comes up
Yep.
against Raven Colvin and the Boilermakers. So that's going to be the matchup that I'm looking at on Thursday night. And so we're done with Thursday. We move over to Friday and the daytime session, as it is for the college football playoff, as Penn State will definitely let you know if you know a Penn State fan who are not happy with all of these noon games. Well, State College is, of course, going to be the site for Friday and Sunday. The daytime game on Friday, the night game on Sunday, though, for State College. So that's important to keep an eye on. They've got an 8:30 Eastern tip in the regional final. But Mick, Texas, as I proudly predicted, I thought they would steamroll USC. Did you see there was ever a fight from the Trojans, or was it all burnt orange?
Well, no, the Trojans were right in it, but the reason they were right in it is that Maddie Skinner gave up 8 points herself in the first set, and the Trojans led all the way to 18 or 19 before Texas was able to take the lead, maybe 17 to take the lead and get there. Skinner calmed down and started producing positive plays instead of negative plays, and then SC was in trouble. They could not manufacture more kills. Batenhorst did the best she could, but that's the only place they were getting consistent offense. And Texas actually kept them in the games in 2 and 3 simply by not putting their foot on their throat and hitting the accelerator. So I don't know how good a win it was for Texas, but I think the pressure was there for them to win, and they got the job done, and that's all that counts. And they got out of there with a 3-0 win. So I think they're good to go ahead, but they're going to play a team that is really quite good and Creighton. And
Yep.
I don't think they're going to win. I'll tell you, I think Creighton's the team, and I think they're going to get there.
Well, it's an early one, right? 1 o'clock Eastern on Friday. Texas Creighton, not necessarily prime time. And I want to highlight a few things from each of their second round wins. You talk about Madison Skinner. She had 3 errors in the first 5 points, Mick, attack errors. She only had 3 the rest of the match. So you
Mhm.
talk about a dominant situation forming in Austin. I think that it's the Skinner show to keep an eye on. She had a ho hum 23 kills, hitting 350. So that's something to keep an eye on. Wennis did not commit an error, 13 kills on 21 swings. Pretty darn efficient. And on the other side, Ole Miss won their first postseason NCAA tournament match in program history in the first round. And you thought maybe after the win over Florida State, Creighton would just run over Ole Miss. It was not the case. Creighton needed extra points in sets one and sets two. So I don't necessarily know that Creighton would have the edge. And I'm curious if there are any odds makers in Vegas to see some of these regional lines. Because I would even give Texas, just based off of their recent history, a little bit of a nod in terms of experience. Because, Mick, we have now seen the levels that experience brings in the last few years. There's a reason why we keep seeing the same 8 teams make it to the regional final, you know?
Yeah, and in most cases, I would agree with you, but I have to tell you, Creighton is number three in kills per set in the whole country. They're number one in points scored, 19.16 points scored per set, and they're number two in gives actually number one in gives at 6 points, 6.5 points per game. Texas is going to have to beat Creighton to win. They can't, Creighton's not going to beat themselves. And they have two left sides, Martin and Sis, who are big time scorers. So I'm trying to figure out where Texas is going to get their additional points because Skinner, yes, she can bring it and she can bring it out of the back row, but Creighton's a good blocking team. They don't make errors and both left sides terminate. I think the edge goes to Creighton.
I don't know which match on Friday I'm more excited for. I think this one may take the cake. The next three are not the heavyweight, high-powered ones, but I will say there are some enticing deliveries to come because 30 minutes after Texas Creighton, which I think is, as you mentioned, a toss-up, heavyweights. I'm excited. You call Purdue Louisville your toss-up. I'm saying Texas Creighton is mine. How about Marquette? The Big East proving some people wrong, continuing the trend of eliminating Big 12 hosts. Marquette was able to go to Utah, win in five. Penn State was pretty dominant after a slow start against a good North Carolina team. They won in four. Are you seeing any sort of chance of a unique kind of upset to come with Marquette going to Penn State?
Marquette has done their damage. They're well coached. They did a great job against Utah. They have no chance against Penn State. And when I say no chance, I mean
All right,
if Penn
good.
State plays, if Penn State plays, they've got this match. But not to discredit Marquette because they're overachieving. They're playing at extremely high level. Their coach has to be extremely proud of them. It's just that Penn State's got too much firepower for this team.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. Hannah is just a revelation in her second year in state college, and obviously Merzick, one of the national player of the years to keep an eye on that watch list with 21 kills. Trammell had a ho-hum night, didn't she? 8 kills, 9 swings, no errors. Just a businesswoman special to come in and take down UNC in that fashion. So Penn State Marquette sets the tone for what would be pretty storybook if we can get Wisconsin, Nebraska, wouldn't it? Because now we go over to Lincoln,
Sure.
where Nebraska was able to take care of Miami without too much fuss, and you know a 3-0 sweep there against Florida A&M. You talk about dominance, Mick. You see those stats from the Florida A&M match? It was 25-3 in the first set for the Huskers.
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska's coming into the tournament. They're not playing, they haven't shown a great increase like they did last year, but they have been steady. They keep performing at a high level. Their numbers are in the top three or four in the country. They're just, you're going to have to beat Nebraska. You can't wait for Nebraska to lose to you.
Talk about efficiency. You go look at this, the box score for Nebraska against Miami. None of the three sets got to 20 for the Canes. Nobody had more than 27 swings. That was Landfair. And after her, no one had more than 17 swings. It was a efficient assassination in better terms, in terms of just the way that that Bergen Riley goes in and perfectly cuts up the defense is really, really impressive. I'll tell you right now, it's her against Babcock for me for National Player of the Year. If you really break it down, I think it's Bergen against Babcock. You could throw in Martin and Merzick if you want as well. And then Mick, what'd you think about Dayton? Continuing to continue that trend of the Marquette and Dayton proving people wrong, including me, and a 5-set win. Now, I didn't necessarily think Baylor was a great host, and so to see another Big 12 team fall at home, Dayton earned it in a 5-setter.
I think that was Dayton's host position, but I think Dayton's out to show people. I've liked the Dayton program for 3 or 4 years. The coach has been consistent. They've played consistently well. They've taken on Ohio State. Anybody that will come and play them, they will take them on. They'll go and play people, and they have some really good players this year. I think they're overmatched against Nebraska, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them take a set. Maybe in a really good day and Nebraska not being great, 3-2 there. I don't see Dayton winning, but I sure see them going into play and play free and play all out.
It is all up to Lexi Almodovar, the A10 player of the year, a kid from Indiana, 34 kills against Baylor. She had a couple with 27 earlier in the year. If she goes for 30, 40, then maybe we may have a competition. I do think it's Nebraska's to lose. And so that is the night match. Starts off at 7 o'clock Eastern with Texas A&M as the Aggies are back on the national map. Their first regional since 2019 with the 4-set win over another Big 12 host in Arizona State. So the Big 12 goes 0 for 4 in their hosting duties. And it's Texas A&M, another SEC team, 4 of them moving on. Check that, 5 of them with Texas moving on into the regionals. What do you think about Wisconsin? The Badgers had a bit of a nice layup to get in. They struggled a bit with Georgia Tech, who had a 5-set win over Tennessee. But at the end of the day, the size for Wisconsin battled through after dropping the first set.
Yeah, I do think two things about Wisconsin against Texas A&M and Jamie Morrison's got A&M playing at a very high level here to go into the tournament. But I think the block of Wisconsin and the fact that Wisconsin doesn't give as many points will be a major aspect of this match. And I think Wisconsin can slow down Lednicki for A&M. And once they are able to do that, A&M is going to have trouble scoring points. And so I think Wisconsin's going to win this match, maybe 3-0, maybe 3-1. Hats off to Morrison getting a team of really not any superstars except for Lednicki, who is really quite good. He's really gotten them to play at maximum potential. Beat Texas at Texas later in the season, which is a nice win, but had a bad loss to Mississippi State. And so it's been up and down for the A&M team, but they'll be good for this match. Wisconsin has to play well, but they will win if they show up.
Yeah, can you keep an eye on Pepperdine transfer and Emily Helmuth as well? She had 20 kills to go with Lednicki's 27. Wisconsin led the way. Sarah Franklin, National Player of the Year a season ago with 20 kills. And you know what? The freshman has done admirably in Furbringer. She had 20 digs to go with 4 aces in the win over the Yellow Jackets. I'm not sure how much of a jump in talent it is from Georgia Tech to Texas A&M, but it's definitely a jump out of your comfort zone. But if you want to have a team that's played in Devaney, you know that Wisconsin is going to feel pretty comfortable playing there. I just don't think they're going to have a lot of support from Big Red fans in that match on Friday evening. So that wraps up our regional appetite coming up on Thursday, Mick. I don't know if we are going to get big upsets, like Missouri or Marquette, maybe Florida. I don't know about Dayton, maybe Texas A&M, but if it does lead to the chalk, where do you see the regional final going this weekend if you get a Stanford, Louisville, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Creighton or Texas versus Penn State, and then Pitt against Kentucky? Do you think we could have top 4 teams all moving on to the Final Four?
Oh, I definitely think we could do that. But I think Stanford's going to be one of the teams that's going to be in the Final Four. And I think before that happens, you're going to see one of the other flip of the coin matches is Kentucky, Missouri. I think you want to watch that, but no matter who wins that, they're going to lose in the finals of the regionals. So I think we're going to have everybody but Louisville. I don't think Louisville's going to make it. And I just feel that by watching the numbers and seeing the way the end of the season is flowing. Now I could be all wrong, and Danny Busboom might be able to rally the troops there and get everybody into it. Their biggest match is going to be the regional finals. That's their biggest match, and if they overcome that, then they could get in the finals. But if they can't get through that regional final, and I don't think they will. I think Stanford will overcome. I think the finals will be the top three teams and Stanford. And actually, I think Stanford was the fourth seeded team, not by the committee, but by the numbers and by the power rankings. So I think things are going to be pretty true to the way they should be.
And what's fun is after all of the kvetching, it's not everyone's matched up with their conference. The only in-conference matchup, in fact, is Kentucky against Missouri. And so, yes, in the regional final, maybe you'll get, a potential where we'll have an ACC in the bottom left and a Big Ten in the bottom right. But with the loss that SMU suffered, with, the Big 12 kind of falling apart a little bit, and then maybe a lack of anything in the top right, it's not that incest that everybody was stressed about with all conferences playing each other in the early days. It didn't quite happen. So I'm glad that worked each other out. Couple fun facts here for you, Mick. An announcement came out that ESPN this season averaged over 140,000 fans, up 20% from last year, and the number of schools who averaged 3,000 or more fans has gone from 7 to 22 in 5 years. So that's great to see the growth of the sport. One more thing, Juniata won their third straight Division III title with a 5-set win over Wisconsin Whitewater. Those were a couple last second notes that were sent to us.
I believe the coach of Juniata is Mark Pavlik's wife, the head men's coach at Penn State, because I had given him a call about doing a clinic here in Austin in January, and he said, "Well, I'm not with my team. I'm with my wife, and she's getting ready to try to win her third straight national championship." And so I believe that was the head coach of
Yeah,
Juniata. Yeah,
Heather. Yep, Heather Pavlik,
yeah.
formerly Heather Blau, and she was
Hats
the
off to her.
header. Yep.
She's got it going.
Three-time national champs over there. So that's a lot of fun. Well, we are very excited to lock in. As I mentioned earlier, we will be doing bonus episodes probably Thursday and Friday once again for the Patreon fans out there who want to join us. He's Mick. I'm Daniel, and this is Six Rotations.